Well, well, well. If it isn't the infamous Agent 2020, aka Johnny Punk. Or should I say HTJ Halloween? But what about the worst Halloween prop of 2020? Or my personal favorite, the worst Spirit Halloween prop ever. You've had a busy year, so what can we possibly do for you? Agent 2020, I think it's time for a change. Take them away.
Come out and play. What took you so long?
I don't even know where to start. Hey y'all, what's up and welcome to another video. The time has finally come. Come closer, a little closer. We're finally gonna do a makeover on Johnny Punk. I know, I'm just as surprised as you, but I think I'm ready for the challenge. Now, when I was younger, I was always taught when you have a list of things to do the thing you want to do the least first. That way you get it out of the way and you don't have to worry or dread it while you're doing the other items on your list. At least at the very end, you're doing something that you don't hate. That's Johnny Punk for me. I want to get a design down on paper before I start. That way at the very least I have some sort of guideline or framework to follow and I don't get lost in the details as I kind of make this up as I go.
Don't hate on my mad drawing skills and fancy handwriting. So starting with a sitting prop, I want to go ahead and put him on a tombstone, about 36 inches tall. I then want to make sure that I put a nice crack in his clown mask. I want to dress him up like a punk, so a leather jacket and some spikes. I also think I want to incorporate a spray paint can in his hand. I definitely want to incorporate his old shoes, severed feet or something like that around the base of the tombstone, as well as distressing his jeans, maybe some new boots or skeleton feet, finally some graffiti, and the water mister just to be extra.
First thing I have to do is take this hot mess apart. Let's go. We have a lot of work to do. Now that I've finally taken this lucky guy apart, we can get started. I need to see if this idea of mine is even going to work. I'm taking a prop with a swinging mechanism, which is fairly straightforward. Just has a motor right here and it just rocks this central bracket forward and backwards, and that's what gets the swinging motion. Now, I want to sit it on top of a tombstone. I think that's going to look really cool and creepy. I just don't like swinging props. I'm going to trim it down probably about 4 or 5 inches on each side. Let's go get this cut and then we have 1,000 other things to do, so we need to keep moving.
1 week later.
Well, that took longer than expected. I'm sure you noticed the change in clothes, the little bit of excessive growth in facial hair. I managed to re-aggravate an old back injury. And after a week of rest, several appointments to the chiropractor, playing with some power tools, I'm ready to get back to it. I love power tools. That's all. Now that I'm officially another week behind, let me show you what I've done. So I've gone ahead and just cut up the base. I wanted to make sure that I removed the sides of the swing as well as some of the area between the legs. That way it's not as visible once I attach it to the tombstone top. Because I'm being kind of lazy, this is a tombstone form that I had left over from another prop. It was stored up in our attic. I've reinforced the inside, so I've added another layer of 2-inch foam under the top, as well as some support pieces. That way I feel it'll have enough support once I bolt through the 4 inches of foam as well as the plywood top.
Now that I have the prop placed where I want on the tombstone, I'm just drilling through the wood and foam and using 5-inch bolts to attach the base of the prop to the top of the tombstone.
Man, it took me way too long to figure out that I was using too small of a drill bit to drill these holes, so just saying. But I'm fairly confident that this will work. Since I'm a week behind, maybe you guys can give me a hand finishing this tombstone. So let me hand it off here, and you know, maybe you guys can help me out with it. That way I don't have to spend a ton of time doing it. So let me just take this back from you. Oh, wow, you guys did a great job. Super fast too. Fantastic. We can move on to some of the other bits and pieces, and we can detail this later on once we have the legs and body attached and ready to go. These are a pretty iconic piece from the original prop. Aside from the costuming and his mask, I would say these are one of the things that most people remember the most. Shout out to that Nate guy on YouTube. What are those? I don't want to fully repaint them. I will embellish them, but I don't want to lose these because these to me are kind of going to be the homage to the original prop. And of course, black nail polish. The original plan was that I was going to build a spray paint can to put in his hand to hold the water mister. I just don't think that's realistically going to work with this hand. I thought I was going to be able to cut the fingers out and bend it back and wrap it around, but I think that's just going to be too much weight. Thinking about doing is using a prop shovel that we have and maybe putting that in his hand, freshly holding the shovel that he just dug up Johnny Punk's grave to steal his feet and shoes. Kind of where I'm going with it. And finally, for the head, this is going to be a full-on overhaul. This looks like a mask that is painted to look like somebody's face is painted like a clown, so why is he wearing a mask? Also, as with many great spirit props, this mask and sculpt has a ton of awesome texture in it, so I really want to bring that out because this paint does nothing for it. Let's get to it.
So I'm going to start by modifying the legs. I'm mixing up some epoxy sculpt. You mix up equal parts, wait 5 minutes, and then you can begin to sculpt with it for up to 2 hours. I'm using a thin layer on the top of each boot, and I'm also using some small pieces to cover up any of the holes. Those 2 banana-looking chips on the top of each one are my attempt at bones sticking out of the top. I'm then using water, my fingers, and some sculpting tools to go around and pinch the edges like a skin fold, then make sure the seams are smooth and add texture to the top. Moving on to the hands, I cut one hand open to fit the shovel. I'm now carefully cutting open the gloves and hot gluing them to each hand. This was a bit of a pain, but I really liked the results. Time to remove the face with a combination of a sharp box cutter and scissors. Kids, do not try this at home. I'm now using a drill bit and a hole reamer to open up the eye holes and mouth hole before I go back in and use a box cutter to slice open the crack in the side of the face. I then take it outside, base the back with black, and paint the front with white.
And a Jabberwocky mask. This is what I wanted to talk about. I want to put a skull that sits behind this face. That way I can put 2 eyeballs in there, and that way you see something from behind the mask. I could use a plastic skull, but I'm a little bit concerned about weight for this prop since the head is going to be at the top. It's going to be moving forward and backwards. I just don't want to add a ton of weight to it. Well, I have a solution for that. I'm going to use one of these silicone molds from Nightmare Makers. Shout out to them, they're a small family business here in Texas, and they're fantastic.
Mixing the rigid casting foam in equal parts, I'll stir it for a minute before I dump it into the silicone mold and slosh it around.
Now let's find out if I made a mistake. And there you have it. I think this will work really well. I won't have to remove much of the foam off of the back, which is going to be fantastic. Almost a fail there.
Smooth move. Now moving on to the painting. I'm just doing a rough paint job with some white and black on the skull. Most of this will be covered up anyways. Now I'm moving on to the hands. I'm first starting off with those black fingernails, and then I'm going through with the airbrush and just spraying in the shadows and darkening the edges around the gloves so the seams aren't as noticeable. Moving on to the legs, I primed them in yellow, and now I'm painting the bones in ivory color, base painting the bloody areas pink, red, and magenta, adding some bruising before going over with my flesh tone in the airbrush. I then go back through and add my shadows, a bit more bruising with the airbrush, and here's what they look like before blood. For the mask paint job, I want it to resemble Johnny Punk. I still want to be able to see that when you look at the mask. So I'm starting off by going in with the nose and around the mouth with red. This took 3 coats to get it to look that dark. I then move on, copying the same exact eyebrows that were originally on the first Johnny Punk prop. I apologize for my head getting in the way. I'm still getting used to this new camera angle, and it needs to be up higher. Once the red dried, I used black to outline the mouth area just to make it pop and look more like the original prop. I then added some diamonds and some dots around the one eye that didn't have the crack, and then went back over my eyebrows. I'm now going through with a black wash and just brushing in all of those cracked and textured areas and then wiping it off with a paper towel. Now I'm going to do a quick paint job on the base of the shovel. I'm just adding some rust with some orange latex paint and then a highlight with a bright silver paint, and being super predictable, I'm going to use my favorite mud technique with silicone caulk in a brown color and a chip brush just to dab it on for a 3D mud textured look. I'm also adding this to the bottom of the shoes as well as the gloves to make it look like he's been digging around in the mud. I'm now adding the shoelaces through the holes I created in the top before going back in and adding my favorite permablood. I'm brushing it on thin over the top layer because I don't want to lose the texture that I painted into the top flesh. I'm then using a straw, and I'm specifically dropping it in certain areas around the top to give it kind of that old cheesy horror vibe, but still make it look creepy. Once I had the drips how I wanted it, I used my fingers to smear some blood on the shoelaces. I'm now attaching the foam skull to the faceplate. I use hot glue to hold it first, and then use liquid nails to reinforce it around the edges. I'm now going in with a small brush and some permablood. I'm painting all the surfaces of the skull with a thin layer of permablood just to add some shine and contrast between the flat mask. I also wiped off the teeth because I really want those to shine through. It's such a creepy smile with that eyeball showing. Now I'm going to attach the mask back to the head. I'm adding an elastic strap by cutting slits in the side and threading the elastic band through. This will help hold the mask on the head as well as make it look more like a clown mask. And here's how it turned out. Now moving on to preparing the spray paint can that will be the water mister. I've decided to hide the water mister in the lid of the spray can, so I'm drilling 2 holes inside of it before I attach it to the top of the tombstone. Once I found my location, I'm drilling a hole at an angle that the water mister will poke up through, as well as the electrical cord for the LED light that's going in the spray can. I'm using a wooden skewer to help feed the wires up through. Since it's an angled hole, it's a little bit difficult. I taped over the water mister before I poked it through so it didn't get any particles in the tubing. Once I have the spray paint lid where I want it, I'm using a screw to lock it down in place so it doesn't move around. Then I'm going to glue the spray paint can behind the lid, but you'll see later I'll change this out to a magnet that works much better, and I can take it off at the end of the season. This is the controller I'm using. It's a Frightprops Peekaboo. It has 2 outputs of control, as well as the ability to hook triggers up to it and a speaker. Attached the components to the tombstone, wired my controller, and then used a step pad to tie the prop in to the controller box. Now I'm trying to figure out how to bore out the inside of a cap so I can put a light in it. It took me a while to figure out I could just use a Dremel. Duh. Now I'm gluing the red LED into the cap before attaching the magnet and then the spray paint can and hot gluing the wire down the back. I'm using black spray paint to darken the red hoodie, distress the jeans and make them look a little bit darker. I also got a fake leather jacket and some costume. I'm distressing that with some black paint as well. Moving back inside, I'm just using my airbrush and some black paint to detail and create some watermarks and shadows on the tombstone.
This is turning into way more of a production than I planned. I think we're almost there. Almost to the fun part where I can start putting it together. We changed a few things. I added a light here to the spray paint can as well as ungluing the spray paint can and putting a magnet underneath it. That way I can turn the spray paint can that has the light in it to illuminate the water mister that's down here in the cap. The water mister fires, the light inside of the spray paint can will fire as well. Let's get this punk finished.
Once I started setting up the prop, I decided to add skeleton feet, and I just zip tied those to the leg supports first. I used a hook attached to the tombstone to support the shoes, and then added magnets to the tombstone and the shovel to help hold that.
Future Kellen, you can tell because of my different colored Adidas hoodie, but I just wanted to inject a few things, a little bit of the troubleshooting we dealt with this prop before we move on. First thing I want to go over is this prop was originally designed, obviously, to swing. So the motor was not meant to deal with the forces of having a prop tilt forward and backwards. And also, I heard in store and many people say that the motors failed on this prop very often. So to circumvent that and expecting it to break, I wanted to help assist the motors. What I did was I just used some bungee cords. We used 2 of these blue bungee cords. And what I did was I ran these up inside and attached them right where the neck attaches to hold the head on, and then I ran them down to a fixed point at the base of the motor. It helps lift the prop back up. The second thing I want to correct that I had an issue with was wiring the step pad. I followed the Frightprops instructions on connecting the red wire to the normally closed connection and the copper or black wire to the common. What I was finding was the second I turned on the Frightprops controller, it was just activating the prop over and over and over again. As I switched and I put the red wire, which Frightprops said to put in the normally closed spot, into the common, and then I put my black, or in this case the copper outer casing, in the NO, or normally open. It worked out perfectly. Now I wanted to use the original sound for this prop, so that's why I wired it into a new controller and it's still activating the audio, but I also wanted to add to that. When you turn the actual item on, you will hear an ambient sound. The speaker now inside of his chest, you can hear that it's making kind of a spray paint sound. I recorded this sound effect outside when I was spray painting, and I recorded it in voice memos on my iPhone. I know some people out there might be interested on how to activate Spirit Halloween props from the Frightprops controllers. Now let's get back to the makeover.
Finally, I dragged this bad boy outside for some detailing with black spray paint, just to tie everything together, and then I went back through with some permablood under the severed legs and across the front of the tombstone. And here's the finished result. One of the most requested makeover props to date. I think we finally fixed the worst Halloween prop of 2020 and maybe of all time. This one was such a challenge, you guys, and honestly, I ended up having so much fun on it. I didn't think creatively I could really get into this, but I think working the water mister in, changing up from a swinging prop to the seated prop, and then adding a lot of those detail elements that bring the people in closer to look at the prop will make that water mister much more effective. I hope you guys enjoyed this makeover video. I had so much fun doing it, and I'm so glad to be back. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smack that like button. It makes me smile and lets me know you guys enjoy these videos. If you're interested in seeing our next video or makeover prop, be sure to hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell if you want to be one of the first to know when we post a new video. Thank you guys so much again for the support and for watching. We really hope you guys enjoyed this video. We really had a challenge here, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think he looks pretty freaking cool. Here's Johnny. Let me know in the comment section below if you know what movie that's from. Remember, if you create it, they will come. Let's check out the new Johnny Punk.
Who you calling a clown? You don't know who you're messing with. I've been waiting for you to come out and play. What took you so long? You made a big mistake coming over here. I'll give you a 3-second head start to get lost. 1, 2, 3. Who you calling a clown? You don't know who you're messing with. I've been waiting for you to come out and play. What took you so long? You made a big mistake coming over here. I'll give you a 3-second head start to get lost. 1, 2, 3.
So I think we're done doing clown props for a while. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you didn't, be sure to set your prop to motion sensing and watch it again. That's it. I'm done.